Okay, so we're gonna make some bread again today. I'm gonna try to make. Well, I am gonna make some rosemary. So, just before we get started, I'm gonna dice up some fresh rosemary that grows out in front of my apartment here, and it's the Northwest is the perfect place for evergreens, and that's basically what the rosemary bush tends to be, is a evergreen shrub, and it thrives here, and it even thrives in places where it doesn't get a whole lot of water. It seems to do quite well wherever I've seen it take root. So I dice this up fairly fine. I don't want to leave too big of chunks in it because it's going right in the dough. I use a rosemary infusion for the oil for the bread, so, and also instead of an egg wash, I use an oil wash, a rosemary oil wash at the end. So there it is. Now, so first things, we're going to get some water, and it says 80 degrees. It would be slightly less than body temperature. Actually, I go for body temperature. I think that works fine. I've used really hot water in the past, as long as you don't get it too hot so that it kills the yeast. Yeast dies at about 120. Starts to die off then. So there we go, just barely luke. So I'm going to put in calls for a cup, and let me refresh my memory, make sure I get it right. A cup and a half water for the 2 pound. Okay, cup and a half of water. Okay. There you go. Cup and a half of water. And next is, it says 3 tablespoons of margarine, but I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of olive oil infused with rosemary. So to make the infusion, I just, it's a half gallon of oil under very low heat for a couple of hours, with a bunch of rosemary in it, and then I strain it out. So there's 3 tablespoons. Love the smell of rosemary. And next is, says 2 tablespoons sugar. I'm not big on sugar, but I do use honey. So a bit of honey. Couple of tablespoons of honey. It not only sweetens up the dough, it provides a little instant food for the yeast, and I'm going to put in some sourdough starter too that Disa gave me. Herman. We're gonna have plenty there. Now going back to this, looking at it, Sugar, I don't use the dry skim milk. Salt, says 1¼ teaspoons. So, that's a ½ teaspoon. Well, that's not very big. Okay, there's a teaspoon. Now, it would be better if we did everything by weight, but the problem is I don't have a scale that works now. On my scale, it's just defuncto. So there's and honey gets on everything. Okay, salt, and then Herman, which I've been feeding and getting him warmed up. Herman's we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of Herman. See how that works. So we got the dry in, got the wet in. The next thing is the bread flour. 4 cups. That one's empty. Unbleached. Oh. Up 2 cups. And another 2 cups. A little bit extra. I like a slightly drier mix. Makes it easier for me. Now, add the yeast in. So, now since I used some of the, this says 1½ teaspoons of yeast, but since I've already used some of the Herman, I'm going to do about half that. So it's going to be about, whoa, that's okay. Don't want too much because it just makes the mix so gushy and gushy. That's a technical term, gushy and gushy. Okay, so it's all in here. So this is the bread machine. Goes down in there. Close. I set it on the dough setting because it'll just mix the dough. Let's start. And whoops, excuse me. And this will go on for, it takes about 30 minutes to mix it. I don't use the bread machine to rise or to bake it. I just use it to mix the first mixing of the dough. Saves wear and tear on my hands. I'm getting old. So, good start. And we'll come back in a bit and we'll one of the great things about baking is that it's very forgiving. I forgot to put in the thing and put in the rosemary, but I can just dump it in on top here. Now, the rosemary will mix right up. I'll put my dough knife back here. Okay, so here we be. The dough is risen the first time. It's been mixed in the bread machine. I left it for about an hour to sit on top of the stove. With the stove on, the dough feels kind of cold because it's cold in here because it's so cold outside, but I'm going to go ahead and knead this up and put it back over the stove, and that should warm it up after I get done rolling it out. Dough feels pretty good. It's not sticky. Can add a little bit of flour as I go. But basically, I just roll it over and knead it like this. And now and then, when it gets sticky, I add a little more flour. So I basically started out by, if you'll see the bread machine, it's dirty now, but you can see the bread machine mixing bowl, and there, and I put in a cup and a half of warm water, just a little less than body temperature, so it feels slightly cool to the touch. And then I added a little, see, here's the recipe here. I added, instead of the 2 tablespoons of butter, I used 2 tablespoons of rosemary infused virgin olive oil, and then instead of sugar I did a couple tablespoons of honey, and then I don't add the milk, and a little over a tablespoon of salt, and then 4 cups of bread flour on top of the liquid, and then I dice up really fine about a heaping tablespoon of rosemary, and fresh rosemary, which I have growing out in front of my apartment. And then into the liquid, I forgot to say that, I have some of this sourdough starter that Disa gave me. It's called Herman, and I added a couple tablespoons of Herman, and then I added a little less than a teaspoon of Red Star yeast to the dry, and then I put it in the bread machine and let it mix it up and get it started, and it takes about, you know, half an hour or so to get good and mixed, and then I take it out and put it on top of the stove, and that works pretty well. So now I've got this dough here. Feels slightly cool to the touch too. I don't know quite how that's going to work, but we'll see. I'm gonna take this log here and roll it out just a tad so that it's about like that. Got the gluten activated. It's nice and springy and sprongy. Take my dough knife. This is also known as a scraper, but in the baking world this is called a dough knife. And we actually sharpen them with a file so that they'll cut through the dough easily. So what I'm going to do, instead of weighing them, I'm just going to do like what appears to be 4 equal pieces. There we go. And then I take this and I kind of get it so it's evenly distributed in my hands like this. And then put it on the table and I start to roll it out. I'm still kind of into making baguettes at this point. I think I'm going to make 2 baguettes and maybe 2 rounds. These are there's the bag. There's 1 baguette. Let me. My pan. Butter. I don't have release papers. I've looked for them, but I haven't found them anywhere around here that they sell release papers, sheet papers. It's called release papers or sheet papers. Anyway, so I put a little butter on there, keep it from sticking. And then that's how it rolled out. There we go. Looks pretty good. Do another one. So I don't add any flour at this level because I want to be able to grip it. I'm rolling it. Unless, of course, the dough is too wet, and then I should be still continuing to mix it. So this is, it's already had 1 rise, pretty good one. Sat for over an hour in here, although it was a little cool in here. It was warm when it started out from the bread machine. So make nice little baguettes, and then I'm gonna make a round, put it over like this. See, like that, and then I do this. I keep folding it underneath with my fingers like this. It's a little bit. I could use a little bit of flour. And underneath with my fingers like this. Oops. See, like that. Makes a nice little round. Like that. And then do the same with this one. There we go. There we go. And again, that's the rosemary I chopped up. And I had chopped up and added. And it gives it a nice feel. See, it looks good. Right there. So now we're gonna put it on here, let it rise. The oven is on, so it's sending heat up. it'll get the bottom of that pan warm, and I'll have to check on it because sometimes it gets too warm and it ruins the dough. But that's why I have it on that frying pan to get it right off the burner so it doesn't get too hot. That should work for now. And this is the flour I'm using, natural white premium all-purpose flour by the 5-pound unbleached, and it's pretty good. And then of course you have to keep washing things, because the problem with dough is that it's a form of glue and it likes to stick to everything. So want to make sure that you keep everything in water, and we'll come back out here in about 20 minutes and check on the dough and see how it's doing. And blessed be, old friend, and we shall make bread together. Okay, time to check the bread. Oh, it looks great. Okay, so I need to slice the top. Okay. Okay, into the oven it goes. Not happy. Okay, so we're going to do a little wash with the rosemary oil. Make it sound nice and good. And sprinkle it with some salt. And turn off the oven, and then we'll let it sit for a few minutes, and then voila, we shall be eating a bread.